Hey everybody, AJ here, and welcome back to the Eagle Ray channel. We are doing a live stream every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific, and this is, I believe, the fourth live stream that we've done. We're going to try and keep it short and sweet because it's early days on the channel. There's probably not going to be very many people in the chat, but we're going to talk about some electric vehicle news with regard to the marine industry. We're going to look at the latest Eagle Ray video that came out just a few days ago, and then we're going to look at the current giveaway that's running, and if anybody has any questions in the chat after that, we will do an AMA, but like I said, it's going to be short and sweet because the channel's been around for almost a month now. And a year from now, you'll probably see a lot more people in the chat because I'm going to be doing this every single week. So let's jump right into it. Let's look at the news. The electric marine industry is really kind of being driven by the electric car industry right now because it's a very small boutique industry. Most people who have electric on their boats are not using them to drive the propulsion system because that's dominated by gas in most cases, except in like the troller category. When you get to your fishing spot and you want to just move around from bank to bank, people are doing that with electric motors. They've been doing that for decades, but getting across the lake is always gas these days for the most part. There are some electric outboards starting to take hold in the market, but it's so early that most people are still using gas. But in the electric car market, it's a bit of a different story. And people argue about like where we are with electric cars right now. I just heard Tesla say a little over a week ago on their investor event that they did that the electric vehicle market is now almost 10% electric, and that was a surprising number to me because I think I looked at the car sales in the US just a few weeks ago and saw that it's less than 2% electric vehicle sales in the US. And so if that 10% number from Tesla is true, it's probably because they're selling in China as well. And I don't think companies like Ford and Chrysler and GM are selling very many of their electric vehicles in China because in China there are stiff regulations about what kind of batteries you can use. And most of the American car companies are not using the kind of batteries that Chinese companies are essentially required by regulators to use. And Tesla is the exception to that. They are selling a bunch of cars that have a different kind of batteries in their Chinese cars than they sell to us in the States. It's an interesting dynamic because I think that what's happening in China is kind of an early sign of what's going to happen in a few years here in the States. But it has everything to do with all of the specs of the batteries, not just performance, but longevity as well. So I want to zoom in on longevity today and look at like what are we dealing with if you buy an electric car. This is going to give us a good idea of in the future if you were to power your boat with electric. How long is the battery going to last before you have to replace it? This is a big concern with people with electric cars right now because I think a lot of people have the impression if I were to buy an electric car, wouldn't the battery just be dead in a few years, just like it is in my phone or my laptop? And if I had to replace it, wouldn't that be incredibly expensive? Because the battery is by far the most expensive component of an electric car. It's something like 60 to 70% of the cost of the vehicle. So if you have to replace that in 3 years, that's kind of a no-go as far as I'm concerned. Luckily, that's not actually the case with electric vehicles. Let's take a look at this article answering the question of how long do electric car batteries last. There's a whole bunch of information in here, but the part I wanted to zoom in on was this recent analysis of the Tesla Model S, which shows a 5% decrease in a range anything from 50,000 to 200,000 miles. It's a pretty big range to be talking about, but I think what that covers is basically all types of drivers, from people who like to put their Tesla into launch mode and show it off to people 10 times a day. If you do that, you're going to degrade the battery faster than somebody who's just using it to commute. So the 200,000 mile mark is the one where it's your typical commuter. They're driving 30 miles a day, 5 days a week. And after 200,000 miles, they see 5% degradation on their Tesla battery, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. I think when people think about these lithium batteries, These batteries became popular in cars because they were in laptops once upon a time. They're the exact same chemistry that's in your smartphone and your iPad and all of that. Um, in the consumer electronic space, they buy cheap versions of these on purpose. They tell you that they're high quality, but actually there's so many ways in which your phones and your tablets and all these electronics go through what they call planned obsolescence, which is really a form of fraud, in my opinion. When they catch tech companies doing this, they sue them, and they should sue them for lots of money because it should be illegal what they're doing. They basically make the phone seem like it's degraded after only a couple of years of use when it actually is still quite fine. And so they'll do things like they'll make sure that the screen is on higher power settings so that it eats more of the battery than it used to in the background without you knowing about it. And so it seems like the battery is just degrading like crazy. And a couple of years down the road, you're only able to get 50% of the charge that you used to. And that's what makes you feel like, I got to buy a new phone. So part of that is fake, but another part of it is just the fact that they're using cheap lithium batteries that are very small. The bigger part of this issue is when you go from a small lithium battery to a gigantic lithium battery, the likelihood that you're going to deplete the vast majority of its capability in a given session is much higher. So when you're using your phone throughout the day or any consumer electronics, you're probably going to be using most of that battery most of the time. And that is actually what causes the battery to degrade by the rapid pace that you're used to seeing in consumer electronics. Now, if you were to take that exact same battery and just deplete it from 80% to 50% and then charge it back up to 80 and do that over and over again, that battery would easily last 10, 15, 20 years. And that's even more true when you go to a bigger battery, because bigger batteries are harder to hit as hard because you have to hit them with very high amperage loads to do the same thing to them. And now an electric vehicle would do that if you're flooring it every day. But if you're just driving regular, then the size of these battery packs they put in electric cars massively outsizes the amount of amps that you need to put into them in order to move the car down the road. So when you add all of that up, plus you add in the idea that with a regular commute, people tend, when they have electric, they find out pretty early on that if you charge it up to 100%, the battery's not going to last as long. So some people don't even charge it to 100, they charge it to 80, 85. And then when they go to work the next day, they deplete it down to 60%. So they're only using 20% of the battery most of the time. And when you do that, your battery is going to last decades. And you can see from this article, 200,000 miles, that's about 10 years of use. Where I grew up in LA, we drive 200-ish thousand miles in about a decade. I don't know if it's the same everywhere else in the country, but that's what it has been for me with all the cars I've ever owned. If you have a 200,000 mile car, you expect to do some maintenance on it. If you have a 400,000 mile car, that car has already had its engine replaced if it's a gas car. Now, if you compare that to electric, the 200,000 mile mark, according to these reports coming off of Tesla cars so far, that's going to give you 5% reduction in your range. So the Tesla Model S from 2013, which is it was practically brand new back then, to be fair. So this is the oldest style of battery that they used to make in these cars. They've improved a little bit since then, but it's mostly the same chemistry, so should be a fair comparison. A 2013 Model S could do almost 300 miles of range, and if you drove it just commuting, say 30 miles a day, 5 days a week, and that's it, today that battery can still do like 285 miles of range on a single charge. And that's pretty crazy to think about, because that means if you keep driving it that way for the next 10 years, you're going to go 20 years and it's still probably going to be able to do more than 250 miles of range. That's a 400,000 mile car that can still do more than 80% of what it could do when you first bought it. That's a level of capability that doesn't exist in the vehicle fleet right now. You have to replace your engine in 400,000 miles typically in any gas car, And so electric so far, and it's early days because Tesla wasn't making millions of cars 10 years ago. They're making millions of cars now. And other car manufacturers have just started making electric cars over the past few years. So we're going to have much clearer numbers on all of this stuff in 2030-ish. But the early numbers are kind of showing that the electric vehicle fleet is rapidly going to start outpacing the longevity of the gas vehicle fleet. And this is one of the big reasons, I think, when the electric cars start to come down in price, they are going to start to take over the way some people, I think, are a little bit afraid of. I don't know why anybody's afraid of it in the electric car market. I understand why people are annoyed by it in the marine market, because it is a kind of lip service in the marine market where everything for the most part is recreational and you don't really need to go electric, and in fact in a lot of ways it's too expensive to go electric these days in marine. But we're right on the cusp of cost parity in the electric car market, where very soon it's going to be quite inexpensive to go electric instead of gas. Say a brand new Civic, for example, is in the realm of 20 to 30K. It's over the next 5 years or so, we're going to start to see imported cars that are cheaper than that are electric, that can do equivalent range. And when it becomes cheaper to buy an electric car versus a gas equivalent, that's I think when we're going to see the market share start to shift pretty drastically toward electric. So over the next decade, for sure, I think we're going to see a big transition from a vast majority of cars on the road are gas toward a vast majority of cars on the road are electric. And when that happens, I'm kind of excited for it for the marine industry, not because it's going to drastically change the marine industry. It's still going to be a niche thing in the marine industry for a long time, because performance on the water is quite a bit different from performance on the road. But I'm excited for it because what that means is we're going to have millions of cheap recycled batteries that are available from the electric vehicle fleet that we can then use at very low cost to power boat propulsion. And that I like to do DIY electric boats, so that's what I'm all about. I'm going to be taking electric vehicle batteries from all kinds of different cars and putting them on my boats and just seeing what happens, because I'm curious. But the most interesting part of that is the battery chemistry that we're currently dealing with electric vehicles, because in order to shift in that direction, we're going to see different types of batteries being used over time. We're already seeing it in lithium. There's multiple types of lithium, and each one has advantages and disadvantages. So, for example, most Teslas in the United States are made with these nickel, manganese, cobalt cells. But if you look at Teslas that are made in China, the regulators in China actually, in most cases, prevent car makers from using these anymore. They actually make you go with the safer, more reliable, heavier, weaker version of lithium, which is lithium iron phosphate. And in the marine industry, we've seen these all over the place. This is basically almost the only type of lithium you can buy when you're looking to buy a marine battery, because it's available in 99% of cases. In the marine industry, I think there's only one company that's using these, and it's Torqeedo. And they are probably going to shift to these over time. The reason Torqeedo uses these is because they pack a lot more power in a small space. So you can make a small, very light battery that has a lot of power in it. And that's why Torqeedo uses these, because they want to put the battery on top of the power head. Hardly anybody else is doing that. ePropulsion's doing, a couple of manufacturers are doing that. Most marine companies are using these safer, heavier, more reliable lithium iron phosphate cells. And the reason I bring that up is because Tesla in the United States is using these still. In China, they're forced to use these, and they're probably going to develop an entire pipeline around that because of that, and then they're going to realize, well, it's cheaper and these are good enough. So eventually all Teslas are probably going to use these safer, heavier batteries, because they're just now, over the past couple of years, powerful enough to drive a Tesla at the amount of power output it needs. It used to be that these were the only kind that could push a Tesla because you needed a lot of power to do it. But these are getting energy dense enough where these can be used instead. And so I think we're going to see a whole bunch of these coming into the electric vehicle fleet over the next decade, and it is going to make a difference in the longevity, because we saw these will get you 200,000 miles with 5% degradation. These will get you 5 times better than that. So 200,000 miles down the road, probably 1 or 2% degradation. And then 400,000, 20 years later, your car can still do, if it could do 300 miles per charge when you bought it, it'll still do 280 miles after you've been driving it for 20 years if it's using these kind of batteries. That's pretty crazy. So there's going to be big changes based on just the batteries that are already available. And then, of course, there's a million different experimental chemistries that people are working on in labs and universities that are even better than that. So it's going to be a brave new world as far as propulsion systems in every market. But like I said, in the boat market, it's going to be a very niche thing for a long time, and I'm okay with that, because that means there's lots of room to just play around with different ideas before the market starts to take off in a certain direction and we all have to do it that way. I love this experimental time. It's why I'm doing this channel, because I just like to tinker with this stuff. So speaking of which, let's jump into the latest Eagle Ray video, because I like to do just a bit of commentary on what I went through in order to make some of these videos. So I'm trying to get a good view for you guys here. Where is it? So this was the first one in the current series that we have running. This was me building the world's cheapest DIY electric boat. It's basically just a couple of kayaks with a piece of plywood on top. And I had to figure out a unique way to attach those, because I tried to use rope at first, and that ended up not working very well for a lot of reasons. So in the build you've got here in the first video, the back end is attached with aluminum brackets that I had to custom build, but everything up front of that is actually lashed to the deck with just rope. And that made the kayaks very loose. And so through these other 3 videos, I made a whole bunch of changes to that boat. And it's this 4th video that just came out on Wednesday, right at the end here, that I was tired of the kayaks being a little bit sloppy in the front. It felt a little bit scary to get up toward the front and stand on the edge of the deck because it didn't feel stable. So I ended up replacing all of the rope with new custom aluminum brackets, not just for the back, but for the front. And this video kind of takes you through the process of why I realized that was necessary. So let's give it a quick watch.
In the last video, we made sure this boat was waterproof. Lather the whole thing up with liquid nails. Absolutely no water intrusion. In this video, we're going to make sure the bow is just as stable as the transom. Hey everybody, AJ here, and welcome back to the Eagle Ray channel, where we do all things DIY electric boats. Marine motors, batteries, solar panels, you name it. If it's got volts and it's on a boat, you're in the right place. We're getting really close to the day we can take our project boat, the Yaktoon, back out on the water for hours at a time this time. And we really need this thing to be a stable platform, because we have a whole bunch of motor tests and battery tests coming up soon on this channel. But this boat feels really rickety right now, because as you've seen in previous episodes, we tied the front end together with nothing but rope. Here's the thing though, I'm really tired of drilling holes in these kayaks. Waterproofing them was already a nightmare, so I kind of want to avoid any more of that if we can. So I need a way to attach the bow brackets to the deck without drilling any new holes. I just thought of this earlier today. I'm going to take some plastic that I got off of a trash can, and I'm going to weld it to the kayak like this, and then I'm going to take another similar piece and lap weld it at an offset like that, so that there's a little bit of a gap underneath the second one. If I do the same thing on the other side, then I have like a trapezoid shape in that gap. I can cut a trapezoidal piece of aluminum flat bar and it'll slide in there like a foot putting on a shoe. And I won't even need to bolt that in place because we have bolts in the back, and so as long as that's bolted to the deck, it'll just slot in and then we bolt back there and it won't be able to come out until we unbolt the back. So without further ado, that design, I was so sure it was going to work, and you'll see what happens. I think there is a way to make this design work. You would need a lot more plastic wrapped around the aluminum across a lot larger surface area for it to work. I don't think I'm going to be trying that again though, since I went in an all aluminum direction after this. You'll see. We've got a video coming up about the process of me learning how to weld for the first time, so we're not going to get into too much detail on that, but what we will do is use... It's coming in 2 weeks, by the way. ...that YouTubers always use to make things happen automatically. And it's not working. Hey, it worked. So this part is going to attach to the freeboard, and this part is going to bolt to the deck. Seems like it works just fine. In last week's video, I said something about not wanting to drill with a hand drill for hours anymore, and that's why I bought a drill press. Not all of this stuff is shot at exactly the same time, so I remember that was the same day that I drilled those holes into those bow brackets. We're broken already. We had to scrub the launch again. The plastic bracket on the starboard kayak ripped right open. I think it was ripped the moment I put it in the truck. I just couldn't see it until I was beginning to unload at the launch ramp. So if I had put this thing on the water, the starboard kayak would have slipped right out the side. That shot we saw at the launch ramp, by the way, I've been trying to get a good drone shot of me unloading at the launch ramp ever since I started the channel. I haven't been able to do it once because it's usually pretty busy at the launch ramp. I don't want to take up 20 minutes there when other people need to launch their boats. But I will get one of those shots one of these days. You could see me in the background trying to get my drone in the air, and then it all went wrong. So that was the closest I actually got to getting one of those shots so far. And now I'm going to chop them right off. Such is life when you're a DIY guy. So this is where I decided to go all aluminum, but I really had no idea what I was doing as far as the design. Has me thoroughly convinced that now I need a press brake. I don't have much budget left to finish this version of the build, so I'm doing it the hard way with clamps. If the surface of the metal is too close to parallel to the clamp, then the clamp will just slip right off. But as soon as you get the bend far enough, then you can clamp on the perpendicular and it'll allow you to get to 90 degrees. I don't need a perfect 90 on here because they're all less than 90, but this one's on the way, this one hasn't even started yet. I
don't advise anybody doing that with clamps, because I tried that a couple of times, and one of the times the bracket actually kind of created a spring with its own body and popped out of the clamp and flew across the room. Don't do that at home.
Bend this one into place, and it took me, by comparison, about 40 minutes total to weld all 3 of these. And I am just a complete beginner at welding. I learned how to do it for the first time a couple of weeks ago. Still got a video series coming out soon to show what I went through when I was learning. Right now, the last thing we need to do is actually weld these to the original brackets on the front end of each kayak. We're gonna do one of those snappy jump cuts. Well, it worked for one bracket at least. The other one, I don't have time for tonight. It's almost midnight. I'm going to tackle the second bracket as soon as I wake up in the morning, and then hopefully we'll be able to get everything back on the boat.
You can see the bags under my eyes in this shot, because it was after midnight at that point, and I remember that day I was so adamant about getting back to the launch ramp before the end of the day, and it just didn't happen. Because when the brackets broke, I was so disappointed. I really just wanted to get back on the water that day, and it wasn't going to happen. Like, the amount of time it took me to figure out what I wanted to do with the aluminum, plus the amount of time it took to bend it and then weld it, it took the entire rest of the day, and there was no daylight left, so I had to come back the next day. I do love how much easier it is to assemble with this new design, though. I'm always putting that flip in fast motion so we can get through it pretty quickly, so it's not boring, but flipping that hull is pretty scary, because it's about twice as tall as I am. Not quite, but almost. And it's something like 300 pounds. And so when you have it straight up in the air and it starts to tilt, it feels a little bit like, I don't know what's going to happen.
So I'm gonna see if I can get you guys a good view of this without tipping the boat too far, guys. Check that out. Look at that. These things perform like champions. Look at it, it's gorgeous. The front end of this deck feels so stable. I can't even describe for you how amazing this deck feels. I'm doing my best to shake the boat around right now, and you guys...
I'm very happy with that design. I should have gone with that from the get-go, and if I do a project like this again, I'm definitely going to go aluminum on both the front and back, because it did make all the difference in the world. I'm not sure if I'm going to go with plywood next time, but whether I do or not, I'm going to go lighter weight next time, because the plywood was 3/4 inch, and it's just, this boat's way too heavy. It could be a lot lighter and still get the same thing done, I think. So I think I'm just wrapping up here. I'm telling what's coming next week.
Questionable. The new brackets made the beam just a few inches wider, and the kayaks were already kind of rubbing against the inside edges of my truck bed, so it doesn't exactly fit anymore. So next week we have one more build video before we get into battery and motor testing. This build video is going to be the 5th and final of the initial series, and in it we're going to make it easier to load up and deploy the boat. We're going to give it some custom ramps to get it into the truck in the first place, and we might even incorporate an electric winch. Like and subscribe so you don't miss it, and don't
So this ended up being a 5-video series. I thought it was going to be done in a weekend. It ended up taking almost 2 months-ish and several weeks for me to figure out how to edit it, because I'm really new at this stuff. So I'm still learning the ropes on like how to edit these videos well. If you guys want to leave a comment below and give me some tips on pacing, like did it feel too fast, too slow? You know, just let me know what you guys think about it. I appreciate all feedback. But at the end there, I said a little blurb about the giveaway. So we're going to jump into that because I like to use the live stream where I can spend a little bit more time giving details. I like to keep the pace going in the regular video that gets out on Wednesdays. But in the live stream, I think it's a better format to like talk a little bit more in depth. And so with regard to the giveaway, it's important, I think, to share full details of how it works, because a lot of people don't disclose details in the video itself for a giveaway, because there's not a whole lot of time. And plus, if I just read the fine print on everything, it'd be pretty boring. So I don't do that in the Wednesday video, but I try and do at least a little bit of that in the live stream. So the giveaway right now is the Milwaukee angle grinder, cordless, 18 volt. I love this thing. I've been using mine for over a year. I'm kind of new to power tools because I was a programmer before this. But ever since I started collecting power tools, the Milwaukee angle grinder was one of my first picks. You can cut metal, you can polish metal, you can strip paint off of metal, and basically any metal work you need to do, an angle grinder is a must-have for sure. And if you've got one already but it's not cordless, stick around for future live streams, because as soon as we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're going to be giving that thing away. I'm going to include a Milwaukee battery with it. I got a whole bunch of Milwaukee batteries here. Those things are crazy expensive. I am probably not going to ever buy any more of those. They do make cheap knockoffs, and I'm going to start buying some of those because I'm very curious whether or not I can kind of build my own DIY power tool batteries in addition to boat batteries. I actually have some videos coming up soon where I'm going to be using power tool batteries to power my boats as well. So that'll be fun. But for the giveaway, I am going to be giving, in addition to a brand new power tool, I'm going to be giving away one of my newest Milwaukee batteries that I've hardly used. I paid $140 for that thing during COVID. I hardly used it at all. I needed it in an emergency situation where I didn't have my power tools with me. So I went to Home Depot, and COVID pricing at Home Depot meant a 5 amp hour battery was $140 at the time. That was crazy. That's what made me feel like I'm never buying one of these Milwaukee batteries again. I love Milwaukee as a company. They have great customer service whenever I've worked with them before. This is not sponsored at all, by the way. This is just, I have a lot of their stuff because I like the quality of their products, and they have good customer service. So that's the gist of the giveaway prize. But I do like to wrap up by sharing some details about the giveaway, how the giveaway is going to work in general. So anytime you go to one of my videos where I'm mentioning a giveaway, if you go into the description, you're going to see at the bottom, there's going to be a link of the giveaway details. So we're going to pop this open just for a sec. I'm not going to read all the fine print, but I want to show you guys where to find it. So all I did was copy this bit.ly link that says bit.ly/angle grinder giveaway, pasted it into a new window, and it's a Google Doc that tells you all the details about the giveaway. Main eligibility requirements are right here. You got to be 16 years of age. You got to have a valid shipping address in the lower 48 United States. You need to have a YouTube account and an email address that are connected, because during the live stream where I give this prize away, I'm going to need to verify that. So I will go to your YouTube account to see that you're subscribed to me. And if it has an email address, then I'll just email you, because that's the easiest way to verify. But if it doesn't have an email address listed, then I'm going to email you, and you'll need to reply into the chat in order to verify that that's your email address. So all of the details of how that works is written down here. But this is the main important part if you want to understand how the giveaway works. Because the only other thing to remember is when you come to the Eagle Ray live stream, you don't have to have this checkbox checked in general when you're using YouTube. But during a giveaway, you want to go into your settings and make sure there's a checkbox in your YouTube settings that says, keep all my subscriptions private. You want to make sure that that's unchecked. Because if that's not, and you win the giveaway, I won't be able to verify that you're subscribed to me because that'll be hidden. So you want to make sure that you check that if you're going to participate in the giveaway. So I don't think we have anybody in the chat right now because, like I said, it's very early days on the channel. I expect it to be like this for a few months. You know, there will be people jumping into chat here and there, but it's going to be very quiet because the channel has less than 100 subscribers right now. But one day that is not going to be true anymore. So if you're watching this, you're thinking about subscribing, understand that I am here for the long haul. I'm going to be doing this every week. Regular videos come out every Wednesday. Live streams are happening every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific right now, and I'll update you guys if that ever changes. But I'm bringing out 2 videos a week, one DIY video and one live stream video every single week. So rest assured, if you want to see more content like this, hit subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next one comes out. So I appreciate you watching this far, if you have watched this far, and I'm going to let you go. But before I do, I want you to know, I moved to Lake Havasu recently because I just couldn't stand being trapped in a cubicle anymore. I used to work in LA as a computer programmer in the VFX industry, and I was 20 minutes from the ocean at all times. Never had a chance to go. We used to go to the ocean all the time when I was a kid, and I loved it. I always said to myself, I'm in California because I want to live by the ocean. I want to get a boat. I want to have a house close by the water one day. And it just, as I was working my butt off in LA, it just didn't seem possible because the cost of living out there just kept going up faster than I could ever make a better wage. And so I finally decided to throw in the towel, come somewhere inland where I can still get close to a body of water, where I can get out on the lake and enjoy myself. And so I found that Lake Havasu was the best way to do that, and it has been incredible. I highly recommend. I'm not saying all my friends in California should move out here, although like you probably would like it. But I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, whatever you're doing in your life right now, in LA especially, I know things feel like they're crazy all the time. You don't have time to do it, but I promise you, if you just set aside one day in the next 6 months to go to the ocean, go to a local lake or even a pond, get a cheap boat. You can get cheap plastic boats for $1,000, and put a small troller on it. Get out there and into the fresh air and enjoy yourself, because for me it's been incredibly therapeutic, and I hope that everybody who watches this can have a little bit of a taste of that. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go, and I'll be back next week, same time, and